Hello, friends. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today. This is part 2 of our staple crops webinar series that we're kicking off this season, addressing both specific crop needs as well as opportunities and access points to some of our federal, state, and community funding opportunities to support us in our farm endeavors. I did want to just quickly flag that language access is really critical to the success of the work we do together on our farms and in our communities. So if you are a producer or working with folks that would benefit from language support or interpretation services on these calls or in-person events, please let us know. We also invite you to select language support every time you register for our events. And we will be sharing some more introductory resources and other kind of technical information webinars that we've had pre-recorded and edited for your benefit. But today our guests have a wealth of knowledge, so we really want to just get things started and invite them to start sharing. So I am dropping in our chat our community guidelines. These are what all of our project leads are committed to and invite our participants to hold in both virtual and in-person spaces. We do have some live interpretation happening in Milwaukee today, so we're going to be thoughtful of that. So please drop questions in the chat as they arise for you. We also encourage you to say hello, let us know where you're calling in from. One thing about this project is that staple crops don't follow a universal definition, but we are starting from a place that crops are a foundational food for our communities, provide dense caloric and nutritional value, and have inherent characteristics for extended storage and distribution. So we also invite you to share in our chat what crops you might define as significant or staple in your homes. I'm really excited to introduce our speakers today. Dr. Michael Schlappe is a professor of biological sciences at Marquette University and a professor of crop, soil, and environmental sciences at UW-Madison. He focuses on molecular biology and genetics and developing cold-tolerant rice varieties to be grown in Wisconsin and other temperate areas. He connects his research with local food systems that engages farmers, students, and community members to explore the potential of rice as a crop for the upper Midwest. And Stephen is one of our co-leads for our staple crop project. He's the farmer manager at the Fondy Food Market and manage their on-site farm. Stephen believes food is a universal experience and it unites us all. And at Fondy, he helps growers access land, infrastructure, and the support they need to grow said cultural relevant crops. So I will invite them to hop on and start sharing all their experiences that they have. We're so grateful for you to be here. And Stephen, just let me know when you'd like to see slides appear. But carry on.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and also for being flexible. I'm at the farm just a few feet away from the rice right now, the nplej, and we're also doing interpretation here with a small group of growers. Is there any Hmong speakers on the Zoom call who would prefer to hear the interpretation? If not, what I'll try to do is I'll have times where I'm muted so that we can do interpretation on this end.
It seems like you're good for just interpretation on site. I'll let you know
Okay.
if I see anything. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine and everyone. Michael and I will kind of informally be going back and forth and sharing our experiences with rice. We also have a grower here, farmer Chulor, who also grows rice here in collaboration with Michael, and we'll get his perspective at times too. Christine, if you could start the slides. Thank you. Can everyone hear okay? Is the volume level okay?
All right, you should be able to see your slides. Everything look good for you?
Yep, looks good.
All right.
Everybody can hear me as well?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so welcome to the discussion or presentation of what can be done in Wisconsin, even in a cold climate, in terms of growing this very, very important staple crop. I forgot to wear my t-shirt that says "No rice, no life." So I think that would be a really good motto for this part of the webinar, because rice is culturally very, very important for the Hmong community. We have members working with me growing rice as well here, and of course in Asia in general. And definitely, I mean, it is helping. It's feeding roughly in terms of caloric input, so sugar, starch input, it feeds about half the world's population on a daily basis. So it's a very, very important staple crop. And traditionally it's been grown in the last 100 years or so in Arkansas, Texas, Missouri, and California, but not in the north, because it hasn't been really the awareness wasn't there that it can be grown here. And that's where from Marquette, so from my research as a professor, I was fortunate enough to have access to lots of varieties of rice through the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Arkansas. They sent me hundreds of varieties, and I tested them outside in raised bed patties at Marquette. And voila, it turned out there are several varieties that actually can be grown here in Wisconsin. And then one thing led to another through a grant opportunity in Marquette. So I was able to buy used farm equipment from Japan, and so now we have everything in a mechanized way, basically in a Japanese family farm way of growing rice in the north. Again, as an introduction, rice grown in Arkansas is done with a grain driller. So you would put the grain in the soil that has been usually burned. I mean by chemicals. So there's weed killers and everything. And once it germinates, it will be flooded to suppress additional weeds coming up. In California, rice can be flown over paddies and it will germinate underwater. So that's the other beauty of the paddies, is that only rice can really germinate underwater. Most other aquatic weeds cannot do that, or plants, I shouldn't say weeds, but plants cannot do that, such as barn grass cannot. So if the paddies are always flooded from the very beginning, once we plant, that's a great way to suppress the weed pressure, and therefore we can grow rice in an organic way. The next slide, look at the next slide. So one of the reasons, it has been estimated that maybe in about 10 years, a lot of the water is going to be depleted in areas such as Arkansas, where they have to, pump water from an aquifer, underground aquifer, and that's being depleted most likely in about 10 years. And if you can't grow rice in an upland way, which means just through irrigation, then that would actually diminish a lot of the crops coming from Arkansas. And of course, California has also a lot of drought issues as well. So then it comes, we are here in Wisconsin. We have Lake Michigan with lots of aquifer, lots of wetlands, so lots of water that can be used for this type of cultivation. So yeah, this is one of the pictures from our paddies. It shows, so it's not just the rice paddy, it's also an ecosystem, right? So we have dragonflies coming out, as shown here, every year, hundreds, thousands of dragonflies that being hatching from the paddies. There's frogs, there's of course snakes, there's food for cranes, food for herons. It's a big ecosystem, not just a rice paddy. So yeah, and like we say here, so much effort from when farmers came in the 1850s, so much effort was put to drain land to grow corn and other stuff. But now even the margins of many farmlands are still flooded by the neighboring wetlands, and this is a great opportunity for many farmers in Wisconsin to use those marginal lands, so-called marginal lands, for rice cultivation, because the flooding is actually what really allows the rice to thrive. And on the next slide, I believe we have so Stephen and I are now going through the process of how we implement the rice cultivation right here in Wisconsin. A thing I didn't really talk about much, or you can discuss maybe later, is of course you need a flat area, and that's why Arkansas is so great. If you ever visited Arkansas, a bit southeast of Little Rock, you see it's completely flat, and that's perfect for rice cultivation. So not all the areas in Wisconsin are like that, but there are definitely many areas that could be used for that purpose. And so once you prepare a paddy that's really flat, we need to transplant. We need to add rice, and it starts with the seeding procedure. So in this picture, it's shown that we use like an assembly line. So it's a little assembly line where trays. So the person in the front is pushing a tray that has black soil, topsoil on it, through the machine, and then you can see other people helping with adding seeds. The first hopper, you could add rice seeds, and then the second hopper in the bag would have more soil. So in like one morning, we can actually prepare over 200 trays. And I think Stephen is in the barn right now showing where the seeder is again. So this is where the magic happens in terms of seeding. We have a barn with this assembly line. It works really well, and like I said, with 2 or 3 people, we can prepare over 200 seeds trays, and each tray gets about 200 grams, half a pound of rice. That's a few thousand rice seeds, and with about 150 or so trays, we can transplant a whole acre of paddy. So if you have any questions, just interrupt me, let me know. But we've been growing the Krasnodarsky 3352. That is a rice variety originally coming from southern Russia, from the Krasnodarsk area, and that's great for this area. It has the right vegetative phase. It's growing until beginning and mid August, makes a flower at that time, and then that avoids the cold night temperatures that occur usually at the end of August. And then the seed setting is happening actually right now in September, starting in August, and then we can harvest in October. And then there's other varieties we've tested. All of the ones mentioned here actually work well, but the Krasnodarsky and the other one, the Dvorsky, which I think is also originally from Russia or Ukraine, works well because it has a similar latitude as we are 43.5 north, and they are about 44 north. So it's adapted to that kind of latitude. On the next slide. Actually, sorry, go back one more. Sorry, I will have. Yeah, so to the left of the machine, you see a little incubator. It's an old fridge, but we use that. We actually stack the 200 trays in there, and we add a bucket heater and water, and we keep the temperature around like close to 95, around 37, like body temperature. And then after 2 or 3 days, if you go back, go to the next slide, sorry. after 2 days, we have kickstart germination at the warm temperature. So on the next slide, we then take those trays out and we build those hoop houses. So it's like a nursery, right? A nursery bed we can pump water from the pond into. So you see these are about 130 or so trays in one row. And after a few days, you see that the rice has nicely germinated. We do need to cover this with a bird net because the birds they love the seeds at that point. This is the end of April, beginning of May, and they love to dig out the seeds if you don't protect them, especially the blackbirds are nesting nearby. And in previous years, we put the plastic on top as well because it can still fluctuate the temperature. But one of my research is about cold tolerance in rice, and this variety, so these Russian varieties, they don't like the cold too much, but they can sit it out, and therefore we don't really need, if you have the right rice variety, we don't need to cover it with a plastic. So it's just a bird net, and then by mid-June, so after about 6 weeks of sitting there, we can transplant. This is, I think, shown on the next slide. Yeah, so this is a picture where there's one of my grad students sitting next to me. I have the little hat on. So this machine that also Stephen is showing in the barn. So this Kubota transplanter, it's like a little tractor that in the back, you can stack trays there on this part, and in the back, once the seedlings are about a few inches tall, 2 or 3 inches tall, they become like a sod, like a grass sod, and we can pull them out from the trays and then put them in the back of this machine. We can stack 10 trays in one go, and then stack a few more in the front. So then we can go, back and forth in the rice paddy and transplant. So this is done mechanically, not by hand. Transplant into a really wet. It shouldn't be that as wet as shown here, but just a muddy and wet paddy. What we can't really go into is that preparing the field is very, very important before we transplant. That takes a lot of effort because you have to make it. It has to be a mud. It cannot be just water on top of soil. You have to really. It's called puddling. We need. I have a specific tiller that I also got from Japan that is needed to mince the soil together into like almost a clay, like a mud, and then this is perfect for the transplanter, which has pins at the back just to grab the roots and then push them into the ground, which is shown here in this picture. So yeah, tilling and puddling, as mentioned in the slide, is very important to prepare the field. It's probably one of the most important parts, of course, besides having a live plants. All right, so Stephen showed that. On the next slide, you showed so this is the more or less the density of the plants that we want. We can make them even more dense than this, but this, in a good year, this is what you want to see in July. You have plants growing actively, and also mentioned. So if you want to start this, once you flatten, so we needed the contractor to make everything a paddy really flat, so it doesn't have water too high in one end, but we still have issues a little bit with that. But anyway. Once you do that and you plant, you have 1 year of honeymoon where you get absolutely no weeds coming up because you disturb the soil, right? But in the second or third, so after the second year, you have to really be thinking about weed control, especially if you want to grow this organically, right, without any pesticides. And for the last 8 years, we have doing this. There's absolutely, we never used any pesticides. We haven't even used any fertilizer because the pond where we pump water from is pretty nutrient rich. So this has been, this is a fully organic, it's not certified, but it's definitely it's been grown in a fully organic way for 8 years. So yeah, Stephen also mentioned the slide here. If allowed, we can't really use ducks at the nature preserve, but if you want to have ducklings, they could be released into the paddies, and they would eat a lot of the weeds and other stuff and disturb, because they paddle around. It makes the water muddy, and that's less conducive for other plants to grow underneath. That's one way. It's a nice way of weed control. Otherwise, you have to mechanically weed, and that's what most of my summers is doing that, getting into the field, yanking out the barnyard grass or other. There's two more aquatic grass plants that can take over if you don't really get rid of them. So one is the spike ration, and the other one is called the Sagittaria. All right, on the next slides, I believe, oh yeah, we have, it's not just, I mentioned the blackbirds before. Those guys are a pain, I can tell you, because they eat the seeds, and then if the rice matures earlier. So we mentioned a strain called from Hokkaido, from northern Japan. That one matured in July, and those guys were still there. They would also devour those seeds right away. So the blackbirds, but now recently it's the invasive, the sparrows that came from Europe originally. They also figured out, hey, there is cool food, right? At the end of in October. So those are also a big pain. In previous years, and I had to put fishing lines across the paddy. That was first against the geese, because the geese also figured out earlier on their seedlings that you can pull out and eat the roots. But having fishing lines spooks, crisscrossed across the paddy, spooks them if they want to land into the paddy. But the small birds, I don't know yet, other than putting a net, which is not really possible to do if you have an acre of rice. But anyway, so you have to deal with these issues of wildlife. But we haven't had any rice blasts or pests like that, because we're not a rice growing region yet, right? So nature has not yet brought or accumulated the pests that are specific for rice. All right, any questions about this part? Otherwise, let's move.
Michael, I had maybe if you could just do a maybe more broad introduction of site selection, specifically to varieties of rice that require flooded fields. Like, I know you have to prepare the site, but what are you looking for in advance of that?
Well,
and just generally how that's very different than upland rice.
Yeah, so upland rice, you doesn't have to be flooded. Upland rice is just irrigated, just like it would be corn. But just as an aside, I mean, the Duborskian is a variety that supposedly works well in terms or can be grown in an upland way. But I tested it at Marquette, where it had equal, similar types of paddies, and the yield was about 1/3 or less of that of if I use the same variety flooded. So flooding is still, even though I had no weeds here, maybe it's the microbiome, the bacteria and fungi underneath that help with growth or get away other stuff that is bad for the rice. So it is possible to grow rice upland as well, but then the weeding is even more intense, right? It's even more an issue. But so that's why I think flooding is still key for that. So you need an area that is pretty flat, and if it's not completely flat, you have to get a laser. You use a laser technology, right? GPS technology to really make it flat. And in our case, we had to make like terraces. So it looks all like one, but it's actually the whole acre is divided into five paddies, subdivided with berms in between, because we had to make them into terraces. So that's one of the issues. But if you have a very, very flat area to begin with, you don't have to put that much effort. This is super important. And then before you transplant, you have to puddle. So you have to make it into mud. It has to become muddy, not just you can't just add water on top of the soil. This is another issue. But if you have the correct tiller, it can be done with the correct tiller. So we have one that has flaps in the back that then flatten the soil while you're tilling.
Yeah.
Does that help? Or
yeah, there's a couple more questions in the chat. One was talking about specifically using these types of equipment. If transplants don't take, what does that look like in a hand planted kind of man-hour scenario, or even replanting?
Yeah.
What can you expect?
Good question about, so it is estimated that an acre can be planted with a machine. You can plant the whole acre in one morning, with 2 or 3 people, or the more people help, the faster it gets bringing those trays over. But it is estimated that planting 1 acre takes about 300 people hours. So one person would work 300 hours, but of course, if you have 10 people, it takes 30 hours. But it still takes quite a bit. With more and more people, you can approach the mechanical transplanting. But
Yeah.
that 1 or 2 people, or let's say 2 people, but if you have 20 people, 30 people, maybe you can approach it to about
Sure.
so.
Well, I know you have to run to another engagement, but maybe this will be a nice closing conversation, because someone asked or question, and then Stephen will take over. But what would you recommend, any varieties that are better suited for hand planting, harvest, or smaller scale than an acre per se?
Yeah, I mean, this again, you want a variety that is cold tolerant in the spring, right, at the seedling stage. And you want one that will mature. Like in this case, it is for us perfect because it matures when the blackbirds move away from. Of course, if you don't have any blackbirds, you don't have to care about that. But it had, an extended vegetative phase is actually good for later. So the photosynthetic activity is going to be pushed into the seeds, right? So the more vegetative phase you have, the better that is. Therefore, it has to be a variety that will start flowering around the beginning of August to avoid, because the pollen will be killed by even one night of below 50 Fahrenheit will kill the pollen of most varieties. So it's very tricky. And I mean, besides that, I would look for a variety that germinates fast and has, the taller the seedlings are, the easier it is to transplant them by hand. And then flooding the area, so they will not be flooded or covered by the water. And so the varieties that actually work here in Wisconsin are what we call the Japonica varieties. So those are the short grain, the shorter and fatter grain, the sushi type of rice, right? Rather than the long grain, for instance, like jasmine rice cannot be grown here in Wisconsin, nor can it actually grown. The Thai jasmine rice cannot be grown in Arkansas either, because it requires shorter days, like Southeast Asia climate to flower, right? So it is quite restricted, the varieties we can use, but it's all the type of varieties which are grown in northern Japan or northern China and Korea. Those varieties work really well in Wisconsin as well, or like I said, in Russia, southern Russia, or varieties that are grown in Italy, northern Italy, or France and Spain. So that belt, those varieties are, and again, I work with breeders, and there's breeding efforts on their way to make more cold tolerant rice that looks a bit more like the longer grain rice. So there's efforts going on in that area as well.
That makes sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We will share some contact information and more resources that you all are producing and doing on the ground in Milwaukee with our folks on the webinar today. But thank you so much for being here and starting this conversation. And
let me know if anybody has more questions. I'd be happy to answer by email, or I'll be at the farm now many times, in September, October. So we can also visit, and people can come and see the harvest, how the harvest works, because I wasn't able to talk about the harvest right now.
Perfect.
Stephen knows all about it, so Stephen can take over and talk about it. But again, I'm happy to answer questions by email or in person at the farm.
Absolutely. I think we'll coordinate something to look at that. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me, and sorry about today's a really tense day.
We're all doing a lot of things, so we have grace for it. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
And Stephen, you're up. I think we ended here at irrigation. If you're able to jump into the rest of the field management conversation. And folks
Yeah.
continue leaving questions in the chat. We still have another half an hour and 45 minutes to kind of dig into some details, and Stephen also equipment on the farm as well. You're up.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm hoping to do something a little hybridy, if that's okay. What I'd like to do is I can share some of the experiences, adding on to what Michael has said about the system of growing rice that he is using, which goes back to a traditional Japanese style of growing rice. We also have some farmers present here who have grown rice both here and just north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and also elsewhere around the globe, at a different scale and a different perspective. And I'd love to share their perspective too, if they're willing to.
Can I stop sharing the slides, or would you like to just jump into these conversations?
Yeah, if you go back real quick to was it irrigation you said we ended off on? And
yeah.
And I would also add, if people, please feel free to interrupt us as we're talking. If you have questions, please ask them. We want to make sure that it's meaningful to you. I know for some people, 2 acres of rice is really small, and for other people, 2 acres of rice might be like just way too big. And so all of the concepts here that we're going over are useful, and it's just a matter of applying the right equipment or tools. And that can be something as simple as a shovel, and it can be as complicated as a huge tractor with a GPS system. So please, as you see some of these pictures and some of these ideas, and they don't feel like maybe they apply to you, please feel comfort in that you can go up or down with these systems in terms of the scale. There's scalable up and also scalable down. So we were talking about water, and for the type of rice being grown here and in this system, water is very helpful for a couple of big reasons. One big one is that it keeps the weeds down. So you don't have to weed with a machine or apply a chemical or weed by hand as much as you would if it was dry land. Another benefit, particularly in the spring, is that the water absorbs heat during the day in the rice paddy, and it holds on to that heat at nighttime when it gets colder. So it keeps the rice plants a little bit warmer, which helps them get acclimated to the rice paddy and to start growing faster in the spring. There's all sorts of ways that you can do that. I just wanted to take a moment now to ask some of the farmers here if they wanted to share any ideas about watering in a rice paddy from their experience.
You need for more water,
More water?
Yeah. Any question? Like with them, right? We came in greenhouse and you grow little early. You know what I mean? Like this table. Don't put the in the ground. So like in June, May to June, we can grow. By we plow it and put the water and we can grow in the greenhouse. We think that's a good idea, no?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because we cover the top because no cold and the rain and they came out and the bottom.
Can you guys hear that okay?
You repeat it
Yeah.
once. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so Koa was saying here, and Koa has growing rice transplants in his he has a greenhouse by his house, an unheated greenhouse. And one of the ideas that he wants to try is not just grow the transplant into the greenhouse, but actually grow the rice plant, you know, to maturity in the greenhouse, so that you could start plants earlier in the season, and they would grow for a longer time of the year and get bigger, and you know, be protected. They could have a longer growing season. This also might open up some opportunities right now because of how far north we are. There are only select varieties that will flower and make rice within our growing season. And if you tried growing in a greenhouse, you might be able to grow other varieties this far north that that would grow better further south. And so Cole was talking about maybe, you know, modifying even something as simple as like modifying a table and growing rice through that, or directly into the ground.
Sure.
I know Mr. Chulor over here. You see this like pump, this fancy pump in the picture. We use that to pump water from a pond into the rice paddies. But Mr. Chulor also just uses water from the a garden hose from the house here, and he just turns on the water and waters the rice paddy that way too. Chu, how did that work for you?
It's good.
Yeah. So that
Working.
so that works too. Did I see, was there a question about water or irrigation?
Yeah, there was a question about, and Carmen, if you can come off mute, perhaps. I don't know what acronym is, but Carmen asked, how does PSA water rule fit into field flooding?
Like food safety and water, is that the question?
I'm gonna make an assumption, potentially, yes. I don't
Yeah.
know for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm having a difficult time with my microphone. But yes, the PSA rules has changed, and there's maybe several adjustments, especially with using well water. And that was one of my concerns. Were they using portable water, or were they using, because it's such a small space, or were they using water from a pond? Because those rules have changed as far as produce safety, but I'm not quite sure if this would fall underneath that.
Right. That's a great question. So the pond is an open air pond. It is you know, there's wildlife that in there, there's fish in the pond, so that's not controlled at all. To my knowledge, there aren't any issues with that with rice, for a couple of reasons. One is that as a grain, it's growing out of the water, so it's the part that you're eating never touches the water. And also it's processed after it's harvested, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's lightly processed in terms of, you know, it's dried down and you take the outer hull off, and then also it has to be cooked. Rice isn't eaten raw, and so I think those three things, you don't have as much of a safety concern regarding the water quality. But again, Chu is also using water from a well, from the house well to water his rice paddy.
Yeah.
But that's I hope that is a helpful explanation.
And we'll flag some of those questions and share some follow-up resources for food safety considerations in rice production and share it with our recording. We've got one comment from Addison that said Their parents grow upland rice, which is not the flooded fields, but they do use a sprinkler system. And didn't use it in the second season and had similar yield results. So that's helpful to know. Thank you for sharing. And Tanya asked if you have any considerations for cultivation in naturally occurring wetlands for more of a passive approach to growing these crops as opposed to intentional flooding.
Right. Though, it's a great question. So the land here, I think Michael may have mentioned, so it was many years ago, it was a wetland, and then it was drained to become farmland. And so now we're sort of reverting it back to a wetland in some instances. I know Michael has talked with some growers who are interested in growing rice in the Midwest, and utilizing existing wetland systems. I know there's like a number of potential challenges. One is if it's an existing ecosystem, you might not be allowed to modify a wetland to grow rice in this pattern. And I think it's maybe important to, at least in Wisconsin, there's a lot of wild rice grown that grows wild, that's cultivated by some of the indigenous communities that live here. And this is the rice that Michael is growing out here is a different genus and a different species than the wild rice that has been cultivated here for thousands of years. Michael grows the Oryza sativa variety, which was first it has been growing in Asia for the past, I think, around 8,000 years, and is one of the main varieties that if you go to the grocery store and you buy white rice or brown rice, that is the type of rice that Michael is growing. And so for wetlands, I think that would be the challenge, is can you disturb that existing ecosystem, or is that something that aligns with your values? Or is it even legal? I know, and I don't have a lot of knowledge around that, to be honest. But I know, talking with Chu over the years and some of the other farmers here, growing rice, paddy rice in Laos, you're able to utilize rivers and then, basically just make a little line in the ground to draw water from a river into an area off of the river, and you could create a rice paddy that way and flood it that way. And so then the river would manage the water. I think the other thing is, when the rice is young, it could be sensitive to too much water or not enough water. And so thinking through in terms from a design perspective of how can you manage, if it's a baby rice seedling and you get a 5-inch rain, do you have a way to move some of that water off of the rice paddy so it doesn't kill the rice? As well as, if you don't get water for all of June, how can you bring water into the rice paddy?
Well, in the essence of time, keep encouraging folks to drop comments in the chat, and Stephen, maybe we'll move forward. I know you had some slides here talking specifically about the processing too, so jump ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so real quick, managing nutrients, we haven't had much of an issue with that as of yet. Thank you. We haven't applied any fertilizer to these rice fields, and they were built in 2017. So this is our 8th season without applying any fertilizers and not having any issues. I think part of that is just the existing fertility in the soil. And then, as I mentioned in one of the bullet points there, I think there's quite a bit of nutrients in the ponds here. throughout the years. And so this is sort of maybe another ecological benefit of the rice, is that we're able to take some of these excessive nutrients that come from other farm fields, and basically filter them out of the water. So the rice is kind of taking those excess nutrients, the excess nitrogen, the excess phosphorus and potassium and calcium, and using that to grow the plant. And any water that drains out of the rice paddy is essentially cleaner and going back into the ecosystem cleaner than when it came in. Cleaner in the sense of, when you have those excessive nutrients, you can get different algae blooms, or that's why we have that huge issue on the Gulf of Mexico, the hypoxic area, where all these excess nutrients are going into the ocean and killing wildlife, because you have algae blooms and other plants that grow and take all the oxygen out of the water. Rotation, we're still experimenting with that. We haven't come up with anything good, but we do have a farmer, Shertao and Hoatao, who are growing pabon in the rice paddies this year, and seem to be having some good success with it. And another name for that is water spinach, which is a plant that grows well in dryland systems, but can also grow well in flooded growing systems. We'll also want to experiment with cover cropping, but capacity has been an issue. So we're gonna hope for that and plan for it for next year to try some cover cropping in order to rest those fields and create a rotation. Harvest, Michael uses the machine you guys see. It's basically a combine, like maybe you see in the area where you live. But the combines I would imagine you see are very large to harvest the corn and soybeans and wheat and other crops like that. This combine was purchased from Japan and brought here. And Michael uses it to harvest. We also have had a lot of celebration days where we actually do hand harvesting too. And that's possible as well. Very much appropriate for, I would say, up to an acre. And again, it depends on how many friends you have harvesting with you. And drying. So usually, at least here, north of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when we harvest the rice in October or maybe November, the rice is still a little bit wet, and the reason that that's important is that to maximize the shelf life, if the rice kernel is too wet, it could spoil. And so Michael also has this Japanese dryer. Essentially, it's a big dryer, just like you have maybe at your house. And it tumbles the rice around and gets it down to that 14% moisture content is the goal. But you can also obviously do this by, you could hang the rice. We've had growers store the rice in our greenhouse to dry it that way. I know Mr. Chu Lore has done that. And so that depending on your scale, again, that's equally usable. Or any space, it could be your basement. It could be any place where you could just get it out of the so it couldn't rain, so it could dry out. And mice love rice. So just think about that, and the whole storage process is whenever you bring that grain in, they're very happy to munch on it if you don't have a way of keeping them out. Hulling is just the process of taking that shell off of the rice seed so that you can get it closer to brown rice. Michael again has this machine that does it. I don't know if Mr. Chulor would speak about ways that he would take the shell off of the rice by hand. And how do you do it? Do you hit it?
Yeah, just pound it.
So one way Mr. Chulor would hull by hand would be having that bundle of rice, you know, the keeping the stalk on it and basically hitting that hard against a hard surface.
Like the traditional long they are getting the rice off the
Thank you. So that is a traditional way of getting the rice off of the stem and then getting the shell off of the rice.
we don't have machine in the whole country.
There and then using a winnower, and I'll grab one of those real quick because I have that here, to separate the hard shell from the rice that you want to eat. I don't know. So you can see Zong Cheng demonstrating.
So how you do is you tap like this, so like the tiny particle can just fly away.
So the tiny particles, the chaff, if you've heard that term before, will fly away.
Yeah.
But the heavy, the rice, the part that you're gonna eat stays on.
You can do that. You can do probably like the rice gonna fly this around this high. It depends how skillful you are. So you can do like this, and you can do like this, and then the high from here to here. Yeah. It depends how skillful you are.
So your skill level will determine how high you can flip the rice in the air.
It's kind of flipping like a pizza flour. Yeah, like you're frying egg and you flip.
Oh yeah.
But you have to have the skill. Yeah. Otherwise, the rice can go all over places.
So yeah, so that's a way that you can clean by hand.
So you don't have the jaw.
I don't.
No, because we don't have the machine. So how you can get the
So
rice into the white rice and the brown rice, and you have to pound. Use a certain machine to pound that. So the manual.
So Zong Cheng brought up another important part. So here's just another tool for cleaning. Again, this is a machine-based system. So if you're on a larger scale, this would be appropriate. But Mr. Zong Cheng also mentioned here that one way that in traditional Hmong farming that you can do the same thing by hand is having, what is it called?
Jaw. So
Jaw.
a wooden piece about probably from here to that corner, and you have one kind of flat. So you use your foot or your feet to tap, and then you have another piece and go inside. So you have a big hole like this and make on a wood, so that you will separate the shell from the rice.
Right. Okay. And so that system is basically using like a big hammer, like a big wooden hammer operated by your foot, pushing it up and down, kind of like a sewing machine. And that process of pounding the rice in a large, sturdy bowl will break the shell off and clean the rice seed till it gets to a point where you can you separate the shell, the hard part, the inedible part with the edible part.
Okay, I show you. Okay, I can show it to them. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
you can. I will send it to you. So
We'll share a picture of that.
Thank you. I was curious to, because some of us might have neighbors that have combines that are used for other small grains. Have you and the farmers or Michael like tried to run rice through a traditional cereal grain combine, like stationary? Would it do the same?
I think
Threshing?
because
Yeah.
I remember when we cleaned the combine that we got from Japan, there was actually wheat in the combine. So I think in Japan they were using that combine to harvest rice and wheat.
Okay.
And so my assumption is, and also too, down in Arkansas, a lot of rice is grown as well as California. and they use combines to harvest. So I think I don't know as much about I don't know a lot about combines, but I think if you were to use the equivalent of like what you would use to harvest a wheat,
Yeah,
a wheat crop, that you could use a similar setup. There might be some modifications, but you could absolutely use existing equipment here. And then in fact, that's one of the challenges we have with all of this equipment from Japan, which is very specific and works very well for rice. But if something breaks and you want to find a part, it's very hard to get, because the distribution system for a lot of this equipment doesn't exist here yet.
yeah, yeah.
Polishing is just is everyone familiar with the difference between brown rice and white rice? It's similar to, you know, whole wheat flour versus regular flour.
Removing the germ.
Yep. So that's brown rice has the germ still on it. So it's basically there's a living layer around the rice. And that living layer, that bran, has all sorts of nutrients to it. If you want to take that off and just have white rice, there's a process for doing that. So Michael has a machine for that as well that is very common in Japan. It's a Japanese polisher is what they call it. Again, I think doing it in the traditional Hmong way, would you just use the yaw? Yeah.
But I think we use a yaw, so local, because back in the old country we do not. I think we may have, but it's not popular like brown rice, so we just go all the way to white rice.
Okay. So white rice was more common and more popular. I think along the lines for storage, one of the benefits of white rice is that it essentially has an indefinite shelf life. Where with the brown rice, if you keep the bran on, there's a lot of nutrition in that, but it's also living. You could plant that and have a rice seedling grow, but that living component after about 6 months will die, and so after 6 months, you might get a little bit of an off flavor on your rice.
And can you store rice that has the germ in the freezer, similar to other whole grains?
I would assume so. Yeah, you would probably get a longer shelf life than out of it. Yeah. Thank you, Wacho, for listening to that. I'll just add that I think something that's been really meaningful to me, along with going on this journey with Michael and the growers here, is just learning not only how the plant grows, but the cultural significance behind it. Learning about the cultural significance from a Japanese perspective, because that's the system that Michael is using out here, but also with the growers and my friends here, learning about the cultural significance from the Hmong perspective. And that final picture, I don't know if you saw me, and it was Miss Blia Moa, but she had taught me how to make a flute essentially out of a rice straw. And she said when she was a kid, they would do that during rice harvest and play it just for fun, to play a little rice flute.
Yeah, I did it too fast, but it is cute. I'll get that.
Good job.
Amazing. Thank you so much. There's so many turns we could have taken in there. So I want to give the folks that jumped on this call any additional opportunities to ask questions. We've reached an hour, but we always reserve the second half of the hour for community building, Q&A, brainstorming, daydreaming kind of space. And Stephen, I think you maybe had A couple other things we wanted to share or equipment. I'm not sure what else to think of.
You can take a look at this.
Yeah, if there's interest, I know it's not directly related to growing rice, but sort of tying it to our first staple crop conversation about connecting with the NRCS and finding resources to help you on your farm or your farm to be. I wanted to see Mr. Bang Lee here was willing to share his perspective. He applied to the NRCS this past fall to get a conservation stewardship program grant or funding, and is
Yeah.
in the process of applying that to his farm. And I thought it might be kind of interesting to share share his experience. One way, like, it was really wonderful at our last meeting to hear from an NRCS representative about their perspective, and what programs, how they can support farmers. And I thought it'd be kind of cool to get a farmer's perspective on what that process was like, for them, especially somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of previous experience with the NRCS.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So like, to talk about my first experience with the NRCS, even Steve was the first one to introduce us to it because we didn't really have knowledge or any resource connected to the FSA. So when he first introduced us to it, now the first time I applied, it took a little while. The first year, I my application probably got rejected, but then you just keep on applying, and so this last year they accepted me to the program, to the stewardship program, and and, and then so this year they created a contract with me of how to uh, uh, conserve the land, and such as like cover crops and
I was wondering,
weed control.
if before we dig into the specific program, I was wondering if I could ask you, um, what was the application like? Was it really like long, or did you fill it out on paper or online, or what was the application process like?
So the application process, pretty much it was just like the basic information about your name, your address, and all the social security number, and then something number and the amount of land, your the rental, is it private, and there are questions like that can relate to farming, you know what I mean? So yeah, but it was very simple to fill out. It was nothing. I didn't ask anything about your financial or anything like that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Can you hear us okay, everybody?
It's a little quiet. We can hear. Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so the conservation stewardship program, like, what, from your perspective, what is that program, or what does it mean to you?
Well, well, it means that just try to comes pretty much conserving pretty much the land for future generations. So that's, and we're just trying to you know conserve the land. Really, that's what it means. Really. So
And do you just, it sounds like, I know just talking with you, I know you have a lot of passion about taking care of the land. But there's also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in return for doing certain practices on your land, is there like a financial aspect of it too? Do you get money for
but I participate in the program.
yeah, for participating in the program, or do you just sign up for it?
Oh yeah, so there is a incentive. there's I believe it was like $4,000 a year, and and, uh, and they'll help you with technical assistance, with how uh what the work behind it. And so like if you want like cover crops and stuff, they'll tell you what kind of seeds to buy for it. And if you have trouble with weeds, they'll suggest like using straws and stuff like that. So there's an incentive behind it too. Yeah.
And are there like 2 or 3 new things that you're trying on your farm this year because of that grant? Is that right?
So first thing is cover cropping. The second one is weed control. So that's the two things I'm focusing on this year on my farm.
And what
What's the
techniques?
second one? Sorry,
Weed control.
weed control.
Yeah.
And so what techniques for the weed control are you?
So with the weed control, I'm using straw. So I'll just lay down the straw on my plants, and then save it, and then that way it'll be less tilling, and then I wouldn't have to uh, weed as much and till the land as much too. So yeah. So those are the two things I'm focusing on under this uh, conservation stewardship program here.
Do you have any thoughts on it so far? Was it something that was really hard to change on your farm, or do you feel like you found a way to sort of meet the goals of the program, but also do it in a way that was like realistic for you?
Well, I think because this is the first year, so I'm kind of excited to see what's gonna happen the second year and the third year, and then that's where I'm gonna see if the progress is gonna happen. So since this is the first year of just doing it, you just kind of just waiting to see the results, and then hopefully next year I can see some results on the land. Like, oh yeah, there's less weed here now, less tilling. I don't have to till as much as before now. So that's what I'm anticipating. So since it's just the first year, you're just kind of worried, like, what if it doesn't work? What if it's just a waste of time? So it's just waiting to see how next year's gonna be like.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Were there any questions in the chat?
Not specifically about NRCS, so I wanted to pause for that, and then we do have one returning to our rice conversation, but thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's
Yeah,
scary to try something new, but farmers, I think, are good at stretching those
because
stretching those muscles.
because
Yeah.
when you try something new, it's just you don't because I've been trying method for so long that it's been working, but then when you try something new, that where it's conservation wise and everything with the soil, then you sort of like have to wait to see how next year's gonna be like, the next 5 year, the next 5 years, and then you're just kind of worry about the future, what I mean? So
I
Yeah.
I had sorry.
yeah, but yeah, like I said, I
Oh.
did.
There was one question that I had for you, Vang. So I know you operate a multi-generational farm with your mom and your brother. Um and so I was kind of curious, especially with what your mom thinks about it and the process. Was she do you feel like she was very skeptical at first, or like very excited to try something new, or do you have any like in your conversations with her, does she have any thoughts on it?
Oh yeah, well, for my perspective, it's just like I said, she do believe in helping fertilizing, like, giving, like, having good soil and all that stuff. But then she just doesn't believe in the cover crops and stuff because it's just it just takes so long, Everything just takes so long before everything becomes good, you know what I mean? And then it's just, and it's just the time, you know what I mean? That uh it's just a waiting game, and she just doesn't have time to wait. so so when, when you don't have that time to kind of wait for it to uh, grow, you just want it now, what I mean? So I tell my maybe you should wait to grow, that way you don't have to put too much effort into the land, to the soil, because the soil will work itself out,
Sure.
So yeah, but
I think that's a really like valid concern, especially if you're working on a limited amount of land. To take land out of production for any period of time can be a real challenge.
yeah. So,
Thank you, Bang. Yeah,
but-
it's an investment.
yeah.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Yeah, but we'll see how it goes next. The progress for next year, and then see if are we, like I said, we're using less tilling. Are we weeding less? Are we doing everything less? Then yeah, it's good. But if it's still the same, then it's sort of just like my mom said. Oh, it's a waste of time when I would just we're not getting the production that we want. So yeah.
We'll have a follow-up with you next season.
Okay, all right.
Full report.
I'll keep you guys updated.
Yeah. Well, on that, Stephen, maybe you or Bing could also respond to this, because just thinking about starting something new, there was a question in the chat about what kind of investment, like capital and otherwise, would it look like to start rice production on a smaller acreage. So let me just make sure I read it
Yeah.
correctly, if I can find it right here. Sorry. Or Carmen, do you want to come off mute and ask? Yeah, estimated cost, is there financial support for half an acre? Other considerations? Yeah, plugging into some of these other USDA resources or funding.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts that I could share on that. One is and forgive me, maybe Michael mentioned this in our introduction. But uh he didn't start off on 2 acres of land growing rice. He started off on basically like raised beds on a rooftop at the university where he teaches, at one of the buildings. So in the city of Milwaukee at Marquette University, on one of the rooftops of that university's buildings, he made, I don't know, maybe 5 raised beds and just lined them with like pool lining, and then put soil in, and that was his start to see, can you do this outside of the lab? Once he figured that out, the first year that we partnered directly, I dug a couple like 7 foot by 7 foot, or I think there was probably about 7 foot by 7 foot beds, essentially rice paddies with we borrowed our neighbor's skid steer, and so we just dug out a little square and tried rice like that. We tried direct seeding it, just putting rice in the soil, and then also transplanting it on dry land. um and then we saw that the rice paddy worked really well on that scale, so the next year I did a 7 foot by 25 foot bed that I made with, again, borrowing the neighbor's skid loader or skid steer. And so we made like 5 of those, and then it went really well. So we were like, and so then all the work there was just done by hand. So it was hand work, and then um, luckily having a neighbor nearby who let us borrow a skid loader
How much was seed? Like a little pool or thing, like just to get started. How much is seed?
That is a really good question. I know there's a couple seed companies that sell the Daborskian variety and the Krasnodarsky variety, and I haven't checked them recently for the cost. I'm sure if you wanted to start on a small scale, we could get you some seed for free. And I'm sorry, I can look that up real quick to see what I know where Michael gets his seed from, and I don't know if this is open to the public or not, but there is a place in Arkansas called Riceland, um, where they grow a lot of rice. And I think the USDA also like operates like that's where they do a lot of the breeding for rice varieties in the United States. And so he's able to get, like his rice through that system. And I don't know if that's because he has ties to the university or if that's open to the public. But I know I've seen, I think Baker's Seed or Baker's Heirloom Seed sell the Daborskian variety. And the Krasnodarsky, I think you can get that through a search online. And I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't know the pricing on it. I'm happy to share the like a PDF version maybe of that PowerPoint presentation, because that I know in that it points out how much seed you would need for like a tray, or how many trays you would need for an acre.
Yeah, we will share a nice resource kit after this call. Sounds like there's a lot of interest. Yeah, if you're interested in more detailed support, just send me an email, and I'm gonna share Stephen and Michael's emails here as well as our whole team. So lots of folks here ready to help trying something new.
You can grow different rices together, Mia. In fact, we have that in our rice field right now. And in fact, I can maybe go out and I'm gonna switch to my phone, and we can walk out into the rice field to as we end here, so at least people can kind of see.
While Stephen's relocating, oh, I'm gonna shift views here.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Okay, let's switch the camera. There we go.
Can I ask you a question while you're walking? I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but just cause. So I know sometimes I've been to some rice farms out in Thailand and then here and stuff. And I know sometimes when people are growing rice, they get more than one cutting. So they'll cut that and then it'll grow back again. I'm assuming there in Wisconsin, you cut this once and harvest and that's it.
Right. So so there are two main subspecies of rice that, and the Oryza sativa, that's the scientific name for this rice here. And I don't know let me see if I can get a good picture of it. But there are two rice varieties in here. This is the Krasnodarsky, and then the Daborskian has little hairs on it. Here's an example of the Daborskian. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got little hairs on the end. I think those are called awls. To your question, so rice grown close to the equator is the subspecies, I think is called indica. And then the subspecies that's grown further away from the equator is called japonica. Now the rice that grows at the equator is not day length sensitive. So it basically keeps growing and growing and growing. And you can get, really large rice because the day length never changes. And I think temperature is what triggers that species. It's more focused on the temperature, on when to flower and then when to form the rice seeds. But if you were to, I don't think you could get multiple cuttings. It's still an annual. And if you cut it, you might have a long enough growing season to do a double cut. But up here, yeah, we don't have a long enough growing season. And the day length is what triggers these rice varieties to flower and then to form the grain. And so yeah, so we can only get one cut here, and the rice obviously isn't going to get as big. The yields, I would assume, wouldn't be as high either.
Are you letting the rice dry down now? Is it getting to that stage where you're pulling water out of
Yeah,
the
so we
fields? Yeah.
1,000-year flood. Maybe Michael mentioned that early too. In the middle of August, where our farm was flooded out. It didn't affect the rice at all, but that was the last time we irrigated. And so we won't irrigate anymore this season. So this rice now is, you can kind of see, right, that you can see how like each one of these little little bulges will be a grain. And so they're all formed now, and they're just expanding and filling in.
Stephen, are you familiar with the other variety that was asked about in the chat, in addition to Deborsky, Hokkaido?
Hokkaido, yeah, which
Hokkaido.
is a Japanese variety, and I think it has, in Japanese tradition, there is a well, it has something to do with snow and rice, I think, but it flowers earlier than these varieties. And so that variety you could probably even grow further north than here very successfully.
Could you grow with those?
Yep, and we did. We grew that the first couple of years, but one of the issues, the challenges that we had, well, number one, if you're going to grow them in the same spot, one variety is going to mature sooner than the other, and so you'll have to then you'd have to like harvest one variety while the other one's still maturing, and so you might want to keep them separate for that reason. But the other issue that we ran into here, we talked a little bit about the pests and the red-winged blackbird. We have red-winged blackbirds live, they come here in the spring and they live here all summer and then leave in the fall. And what we found is that Hokkaido variety matured early enough that the red-winged blackbirds hadn't left yet. And so they just ate it all up. The ones that were living here all summer. And what we've found is that the ones that just are stopping here for a couple of days on their migration south, they haven't been as much of an issue as the ones who stay here all season. And so we stopped growing the Hokkaido variety because of that. The other thing, I don't know how interested people are in rice, but and I don't know if I know all the English terms for this, but so this is nplej or non-sticky rice. I know a lot of the farmers from the Hmong community who I work with here on the farm much prefer the nplej mblau or malt mblau, which is like sticky rice. And we haven't found a sticky rice variety that we can grow to maturity here. But, Koa had mentioned earlier about maybe trying to grow in a greenhouse. If there's a way that if you live in an area that has a longer growing season than Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you might be able to grow some of those different varieties.
Well, it sounds like we may have to schedule a gathering to help with harvest. So let's keep that in our back pocket and or potentially do another field tour when we get to that stage at your farm, Stephen. This has been incredible. It's so cool to see it in the field too. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Definitely.
I think, yeah, another person to check out, if I may plug somebody, is Addison Vang is on here. He knows folks in the La Crosse area who, which is western Wisconsin, who are growing rice. And someone was also telling me there's some YouTube videos of farmers in La Crosse who are growing really nice rice that I haven't seen it yet, but so there's a lot of interest, I think, in this part of the world around trying to grow rice from economical reasons, agricultural reasons, and also cultural reasons. So stay tuned, and if you're interested in rice, let's build. I think something else maybe that Michael didn't mention, and maybe it's like a parting note, is we want to try to create like a rice growers association for the Midwest, or something of that nature, where we can get this from the scale of maybe, just one person doing it a little bit here, a professor in Milwaukee doing it, and maybe a couple farmers in La Crosse. Like, we would love to have this find ways to help make this an opportunity for lots of growers across our Midwestern region.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing it, in your backyard in a raised bed, or whether you have like a 30-acre parcel of land that's not very productive because of how wet it is, and you want to turn it into grow rice on it.
I think we can accomplish a lot as a community, so we'll make, let's keep those plans in motion and dream. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Stephen, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for hanging out for the extra half hour. Really awesome conversation and great questions. The series will continue. We're digging in a little bit more now to some post-harvest needs, and each session has a specific crop focus, but a reminder that we want to make sure we're building out all these conversations, the crops that are really relevant to you all. So continuing the conversation about what staple crops means for our communities. I will send out a follow-up email with a lot of these resources that we mentioned, and I did share our team's email in the chat. We'll do that once more. Please send us a note and let us know how we can help you. Thanks everyone for being here. Real excited to keep working together. And did I say the next webinar is September 25th? So Thursday, lunch and learn space, again at 11:30, talking about maize and post-harvest. Thanks everyone. Bye.